And joining me now is the Acting Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf. Secretary Wolf, welcome to Meet the Press, and a happy Father's Day, sir.
Great, thank you.
I want to just start big picture here. Here we are in June. There's been over 8 million confirmed cases of the virus around the globe, and the United States accounts for just over 25% of all confirmed cases, leading the globe, unfortunately, in that statistic. How did we find ourselves in that precarious situation?
Well, I think what we saw early on in January and February is a virus that came to the U.S. We saw China not being very clear, not being upfront about what they were seeing early on. We took a number of dramatic steps, the president did, in limiting the spread or the seeding of that virus here in the U.S. And what we've seen since then is a White House coronavirus task force working day and night to make sure that we have the resources, the testing, the PPE, as well as the guidance to state and local, to governors, to make sure that we can open up this economy in a safe and reasonable way. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a number of states throughout the country in different phases, from phase 1 to phase 3, trying to get this economy, trying to get the country back up and running, and we're doing a great job at that.
Why do you, is this what is considered a good job at this point? I mean, I say this, other countries in Europe have been able to flatten their curves, and we have not. If anything, we're on the rise, and I know we're doing more testing, but I want to show you these statistics right now, very troubling in the South. Just 3 states to show you here where, yes, testing is up 30 to 40%, but the positive case percentage is up in Florida 88%, in Texas 77%, in Oklahoma 94%. We're in the midst of a spike. Is there anything we could be doing now to basically bend this curve that we're not doing?
Well, again, the coronavirus task force has put out that guidance, has put out, CDC has put out a number of things that states can continue to do in their various phases. And I think we're seeing that, from social distancing to, again, the face coverings and everything in between. And I think it's important when you talk about testing. We've tested over 25 million folks. We tested more than any other country. And we're logically going to see a number of cases positive over what we see in other countries. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. But again, we're supporting, this is a state-led reopening. We're supporting that through our medical professionals at HHS and CDC, making sure that our state and local officials have all the resources and all the knowledge that they need to open up in a safe manner.
It looks as if, though, that what you guys have put out, the guidelines that you've put out, the guidelines the CDC's put out, I mean, even the president and his campaign aren't following these guidelines, holding an indoor rally. And so is it a surprise that the public is not following these guidelines as well as they should, given that the example from the top is not wearing a mask, holding an indoor rally against the recommendation of various public health officials, including people on the task force?
Well, I think I disagree with the premise of that question. I think what we saw, particularly in Tulsa, when you talk about the president's rally, is a state in a phase 3 reopening. And so activities like this are allowed. And again, when you talk about face masks or face coverings, hand sanitizer, you do temperature checks at such an event, these are all things that are in those guidelines, that are in that guidance that we talk about. So I think it's important. It's also a personal choice that people are making on the face coverings and where you are within that phase. So again, it's very specific to individual states. We'll continue to provide that resource and guidance, making sure that governors have all the information that they need to make those decisions locally.
It's been a couple of months since we've had a coronavirus task force public press briefing. The lack of constant public reminders of wearing face masks and social distancing, we're not seeing that right now. Any reason?
No, there's no reason. Look, the coronavirus task force continues to meet. I know the press would like everyday press conferences, but the guidance is still out there. We're still holding calls with governors weekly. The vice president is as part of the lead of that task force. So there's a lot of messaging that continues to go on, both individually to states and to governors, but also to the American people. So American people know about the social distancing. They know about the face coverings, and we'll continue to push that message.
Are you concerned that we're now in an endemic? Basically, we're just, this virus, we're going to live with it. We're not going to be able to get our daily caseload below 20,000, which we've yet to be able to do, I think?
Well, what we know is we have a lot of individuals continuing to work hard at therapeutics and vaccines, and so that's really the end goal. We have HHS and their medical professionals at CDC, the NIH, and others really looking for those therapeutics and vaccines. And I think as we look towards the fall and the end of the calendar year, that's where we hope to be. We'll continue to push that while we also continue to do that social distancing, the face coverings, and some of the everyday practices that we encourage all Americans to do.
ICE, which is under your, obviously under DHS, has an estimated 24,000 people right now detained. How are you handling the virus among those detained? And are you deporting people who test positive, or are you waiting until they test negative before you deport them?
Right. So as you indicated, ICE holds a number of individuals waiting for that deportation. So we've taken a number of steps. We've had CDC look at those facilities. We are adhering to CDC guidelines. In almost all of our facilities, we have reduced the intake down to about 70% so that we can social distance in many places. We have voluntarily released about 900 individuals that are in vulnerable populations or have underlying health conditions. And then we are court ordered to release a number of other folks. And so we are taking a number of measures to make sure that those facilities are as safe as possible. What we're not going to do is we're not going to release criminals into American communities. So we're going to make sure that we do that in a safe and reasonable way. And then on the repatriation side is we are testing most individuals that we are repatriating back to foreign countries and making sure that they are not symptomatic as we do that, and we'll continue to do that. And we're working closely with the Northern Triangle and others as we do that.
So you're not intentionally sending anybody back that tests positive?
Of course not. Now, what we know is this virus is difficult. So you can test one day, you can be asymptomatic on one day, 2 days later you can be symptomatic. The viral loads could be at the point where a test picks those up. So we're doing everything within our power to make sure that those repatriations are safe, they're secure, and we're communicating very robustly with that foreign government, letting them know everything that we're doing as we send their nationals back to them.
I want to ask quickly on DACA and the deferred action on those folks brought in to this country as children by their parents. The president described the decision as saying, hey, he actually won. It just means they have to fix the paperwork. Let me ask the question this way. For somebody that is participating in the DACA program, how concerned should they be that they might be asked to leave the country in the next 2 years?
Well, Chuck, what we know is the program is clearly unlawful. And I would point you back to the Supreme Court decision. At no point in that decision did they say that the program was lawful. They simply didn't like the rationale and the procedures that we used. And I find that a little troubling. What we know is the Obama administration created this program out of thin air. They haven't really been held to task on why they didn't put this out for public comment and notice. It's such a large decision and a program. Really, the American people needed to have some comment into that. What we've seen from this administration is we take a very logical approach to winding this down over a 6-month period, been very clear about that. And so we find ourselves where we're at today. The president's been very clear. We need to find a solution for this population, and we'll continue to look at that. We'll continue to look at the opinion that the court produced this week, making sure that we adhere to that. But we are going to end an unlawful program. As the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, I don't have the luxury to ignore the law. The program's unlawful. We need to solve it. The president's begging Congress, has been for the last 2.5 years, to solve this problem. We're willing to sit down at the table and negotiate with them.
So are you going to solve this administratively and follow sort of what the Supreme Court seemed to lay out about how you need to give more time and all of this? Or does that mean the president has ruled out just ending this by executive order, which is another way he could have done it? He just chose not to.
No, I think we'll continue to encourage Congress to come to the table and find a solution for this population. The president's been very clear about that over 3.5 years. But at the same time, he's also directed the Department of Homeland Security to look at that opinion, look at the rationale, and look what the court has asked us to do. And that's what we're doing today. I'm not going to get ahead in front of the president. He's going to make that decision at the right time, but the department will be ready to make that call.
All right. Acting Secretary Chad Wolf of the Department of Homeland Security, I appreciate you coming on, sharing the administration's view.
Great.
And again,
thank you.
Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
You got it. Hello from Washington. I'm Chuck Todd, and thanks for checking out the Meet the Press channel on YouTube. Click on the button down here to subscribe and click over here to watch the latest interviews, highlights, and other digital exclusives.